He told her, "You are merely a vessel for my legacy." And she wore his ring anyway, because the alternative was a prison cell. 1 year of being possessed by Wesley Craig, the billionaire who leveraged her dead husband's crimes to buy her obedience. But here's the twisted part. She's starting to crave the touch of the monster who blackmailed her into his bed. Welcome back to Mr. Davies Stories, my beautiful, amazing Pride family. I have to tell you, your support means the world to me. I promise to keep giving you my absolute best, improving every day, because you deserve nothing less. Before we start this story, I feel led to pray for someone watching right now. Just as Tessa found hope when she was standing at the edge of despair, I pray that God turns your sudden storms into unexpected blessings this week. I pray that He sends you genuine love that protects you, not a love that uses you. May every debt in your life, whether financial or emotional, be canceled. And may you be reminded that you are priceless, worthy, and destined for a happy ending. If you receive that, type "I am worthy" in the comments. If this is your first time here, you are already part of the family. Let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. Now, let's witness this transformation. The rain didn't wash away the sins. It only made the mud slicker. Tessa L. Moorfield stood by the open grave, the damp chill of her black dress clinging to her skin like a second layer of grief. But it wasn't the loss of her husband, Marcus, that made her hands tremble inside her lace gloves. It was the whispers she'd overheard from the forensic accountant just that morning. $12 million. Marcus hadn't just died. He had left her drowning in an ocean of embezzled funds, with the FBI circling like sharks smelling blood in the water. The priest's drone faded into the background as the crunch of gravel cut through the silence. It was a heavy, deliberate sound. Tessa didn't need to turn around to know the atmosphere had shifted. The air grew thinner, charged with the static of immense power. A man stepped out from the shadow of the mausoleum, an intruder in a world of mourners. Wesley Craig. He was a striking, terrifying vision in the gloom. His bespoke black suit was tailored to perfection, emphasizing the breadth of his shoulders and the dangerous stillness of his posture. He wore no umbrella, letting the drizzle settle on his dark, impeccably groomed hair, his face a mask of cold, handsome indifference. He didn't look like a man paying respects. He looked like a grim reaper checking his ledger. "Mrs. Moorfield?" His voice was low, a smooth baritone that vibrated in her chest, bypassing her defenses. "Mr. Craig," Tessa managed, her voice brittle. "I didn't know you knew Marcus well enough to attend." "I didn't," Wesley replied, stepping closer until the scent of rain and expensive sandalwood overwhelmed the smell of wet earth. "I knew his debts, and by extension, yours." Tessa's breath hitched. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play the fool, Tessa. It doesn't suit you." He pulled a sleek, waterproof file from his jacket and held it out. "Federal indictment. 12 million stolen from my subsidiaries. You signed the joint liability clauses. When the dirt hits that coffin, the handcuffs go on you." The world tilted. Tessa stared at the folder, the gold Rolex on his wrist glinting like a shackle. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I have a solution." Wesley's eyes, the color of frozen jade, raked over her, not with lust, but with the assessing gaze of an appraiser. "I need a wife to secure my grandfather's trust. You need freedom. I will erase the debt, bury the evidence, and keep you out of prison." "And in exchange?" she whispered, terrified of the answer. Wesley closed the distance, trapping her between the open grave and his hard, unyielding body. "You will marry me, You will live in my house, and you will not leave until you have given me a son." The scratch of the pen against the marriage license sounded less like a vow and more like a sentence being handed down. There were no guests, no white dress, and certainly no flowers. Just the hum of the courthouse air conditioner and the bored expression of a judge who had clearly been paid enough not to ask why a woman burying her husband yesterday was marrying a billionaire today. Beside her, Wesley Craig didn't even pretend to smile. He signed his name with sharp, aggressive strokes, then slid a second document toward her, the non-disclosure agreement. "One signature for the world," he murmured, his voice devoid of warmth. "One for the silence." Tessa signed. With that ink, she traded her freedom for immunity. The drive to the Craig estate was suffocating. When the iron gates parted, revealing the sprawling, brutalist mansion of concrete and glass, Tessa felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. It was a fortress, not a home. Inside, the foyer was cavernous, dominated by black marble and abstract art that looked more like jagged wounds than decoration. The house was magnificent, pristine, and utterly soulless. A museum where touching the exhibits was forbidden. Tessa, with her chaotic dark curls and flushed skin, felt like a splash of vibrant paint spilled onto a grayscale canvas. "Your wing is the East Suite," Wesley said, not bothering to offer a tour. He led her into a study that smelled of aged leather and cold calculation. He didn't sit. He simply leaned against his mahogany desk and gestured to a tablet resting on the leather surface. "We need to discuss the terms of your residency." Tessa picked up the device. It wasn't a welcome packet. It was a medical schedule. "Dr. Eris will arrive at 6 a.m. daily for temperature checks and hormonal paneling," Wesley explained, his tone clinical, as if discussing a merger rather than a marriage. "We need to identify your peak fertility window with absolute precision. My grandfather's trust expires in 12 months. We don't have time for guesswork." Tessa felt the blood drain from her face. "You're tracking my cycle like I'm a brood mare?" "I'm managing an investment," he corrected, his jade eyes locking onto hers with terrifying intensity. "According to your medical history, your window opens in 2 days. Until then, you will acclimate. But when the data confirms ovulation, you will be in my bed." "And if I refuse?" Tessa challenged, though her voice shook. Wesley pushed off the desk, towering over her. He reached out, his thumb grazing her jawline, a touch that was possessive, electric, and frighteningly intimate. "You won't. You signed the contract, Tessa. You want safety? I provide it. I want an heir. You provide him. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. We continue until conception is confirmed." He dropped his hand, the warmth of his touch lingering like a brand. "Dinner is at 8. Don't be late." 2 days later, the emerald silk gown pooled around Tessa's feet like a spilled potion, shimmering against the stark, monochromatic oppression of the master suite. She stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the rain lash against the glass, waiting for the executioner. The dress, a peace offering from Wesley's personal shopper, was backless and held up by precarious straps. A garment designed for easy access, not modesty. She looked like a queen dressed for the guillotine. The door clicked open. Tessa didn't turn. She watched his reflection in the dark glass as he entered. Wesley had discarded his jacket, his white dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with tension. He didn't look at the room. He looked entirely at her. "Dr. Eris confirmed the surge," Wesley said. "No pleasantries, no romance, just the cold, hard data of biology." Tonight is optimal. You make it sound like a board meeting, Tessa replied, her voice steady despite the rabbit-quick pulse in her throat. It is, he countered, crossing the room in 3 long strides. He stopped directly behind her, close enough that his body heat radiated through the thin silk, burning her skin. This is the merger, Tessa. Everything else was just paperwork. He didn't ask for permission. He had bought that yesterday. His hand settled on her waist, large and heavy. Tessa flinched, expecting cruelty, but his touch was shockingly precise, almost reverent in its possessiveness. He swept her hair aside, exposing the nape of her neck to the cool air and his warm breath. "Unzip it," she whispered, wanting to get it over with. "No." His voice dropped an octave. Rougher now, the clinical veneer cracking. "I want to see you fight it." He traced the line of her spine, his calloused fingertips igniting nerve endings she had tried to numb. It was infuriating. She hated him for the blackmail, for the debt, for the cage he'd built around her. But as his hand slid upward to the zipper, her breath hitched, a treacherous sound of want that betrayed her hatred. Wesley paused, catching her reflection in the glass. His eyes were dark, dilated, stripping away the contract and the pretense. "You hate this," he murmured against her ear, his lips grazing the sensitive skin. "I hate you," she corrected, her head falling back involuntarily as he finally lowered the zipper. The green silk whispered as it fell, leaving her exposed to his gaze. "Good." Wesley spun her around, his grip tightening on her bare hips, pulling her flush against him. The friction was electric, a sudden violent spark that incinerated the distance between them. "Hate me all you want, Tessa. Just don't pretend you don't feel this." He kissed her then, not a seal on a contract, but a claiming. It was hungry and devastating. And God help her, Tessa kissed him back. The flashbulbs outside the Pierre Hotel were blinding, a strobe light assault that felt less like a celebration and more like an interrogation. Tessa kept her chin high, her smile fixed and brittle as glass, while Wesley guided her through the sharks circling the red carpet. His hand was a heavy, constant weight on the small of her back, branding her, steering her, reminding every shareholder and tabloid vulture that she was his acquired asset. Inside, the gala was a sea of black ties and diamonds, the air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and corporate desperation. Wesley didn't leave her side. He paraded her through the room, introducing her to board members with a possessive pride that felt confusingly genuine. "My wife," he would say, the words rolling off his tongue like a warning shot. Then the crowd parted, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Wesley," a voice drawled, sharp as a guillotine blade, "I see the rumors of your desperation were not exaggerated." Victoria Craig stood before them, clutching a flute of champagne like a weapon. She was an elegant woman with eyes that held the same predatory glint as her nephew's, though hers were clouded with malice. She swept her gaze over Tessa, lingering on the diamond necklace Wesley had fastened around her throat an hour ago. "A lovely bauble," Victoria mused, her voice pitched perfectly to be heard by the surrounding circle. "Though I suppose it's quite the upgrade from your usual accessories. Tell me, Mrs. Moorfield, or is it Craig now? Did you have to wash the stench of your late husband's prison sentence off your skin before you crawled into my nephew's bed? Or does Wesley enjoy the thrill of sleeping with a felon's accomplice?" The silence that followed was deafening. Tessa felt the blood drain from her face, the shame of the last month crashing down on her. She opened her mouth to defend herself, but the hand on her back tightened, pulling her flush against a wall of hard muscle. "Careful, Aunt Victoria," Wesley said, His voice was terrifyingly soft, velvet-wrapped threat that made the nearby guests step back. You seem to be under the impression that your opinion holds value in this company, or in my life. I'm just speaking the truth, darling, Victoria sneered, though her smile faltered. Wesley stepped forward, shielding Tessa completely, his body a barrier between her and the world. Here's the truth. Tessa is my wife. She carries my name and my protection. If you ever look at her with anything less than absolute reverence, I will not just vote you off the board. I will audit every shell company you've set up in the Caymans and strip you of everything but the clothes on your back. He leaned down, his eyes blazing with a dark, lethal fire. She is mine. Do not touch what is mine. He didn't wait for a response. Gripping Tessa's elbow, he turned her away from his stunned aunt. As they walked away, Tessa looked up at him, her heart hammering against her ribs. For the first time, the cage didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a fortress, and the monster holding the key was the only thing standing between her and the wolves. The seasons changed outside the glass walls, turning from rain to a biting frost, mirroring the chill inside the Craig estate. 3 months. 3 cycles of clinical precision, scheduled intimacy, and the crushing disappointment of a single red line. The Heir clause hung over Tessa's head like a sword, the silence at the breakfast table growing heavier with every negative result. Failure wasn't just an emotional blow. In this house, it was a breach of contract. She sat on the floor of the library, surrounded by the remnants of her old life. A box of Marcus's things she hadn't the strength to burn. A photo of them in Cabo lay in her lap. They were smiling, oblivious to the fact that he was already stealing millions, already selling her future to pay for his sins. The grief wasn't for him anymore. It was for the girl in the photo who had been so stupidly trusting. A sob tore from her throat, raw and ugly. Stop. The command came from the doorway. Wesley stood there, tie undone, his presence filling the room with suffocating intensity. He didn't look angry. He looked tormented. He crossed the room, ignoring the priceless Persian rug, and dropped to his knees in front of her. Why do you waste tears on a ghost who left you to rot? He demanded, his voice rough. I'm not crying for him, Tessa choked out, knocking the photo away. I'm crying because I can't do the one thing you bought me for. I'm failing you. I'm failing everyone. Wesley's expression fractured. For a moment, the billionaire CEO vanished, replaced by a man terrified of his own desires. He reached out, his thumbs wiping the tears from her cheeks with startling gentleness. You haven't failed. You are surviving. But I'm done sharing your head with a dead man. He pulled her against his chest, holding her tightly, his heartbeat thudding against her ear like a war drum. It was the first time he had held her without the intent of sex. It broke her. Wesley, she whispered into his shirt, the scent of him grounding her. I think I need to take a test. The bathroom was stark white, the fluorescent lights humming in the silence. 5 minutes felt like 5 years. They stood side by side, not touching, staring at the plastic stick on the marble counter. Then the timer beeped. Wesley picked it up. His knuckles turned white. He didn't speak. He just handed it to her. 2 pink lines. Tessa let out a shaky breath, her hand flying to her stomach. It's positive. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The air didn't lighten. It thickened, becoming heavy with a new, terrifying weight. Wesley didn't smile. He turned to her, his jade eyes darkening, his hand moving to cover hers over her belly. The heat of his palm was branding. No more Gallus. he said, his voice dropping to a possessive growl. No more leaving the estate. You are carrying the dynasty now, Tessa. You are carrying my son. He looked at her, and the hunger in his gaze wasn't just for the heir anymore. It was for the mother. And God help anyone who tries to take him from me. The world outside the estate ceased to exist. In the weeks following the positive test, Wesley transformed the mansion into a fortress and himself into its warden. Security teams patrolled the perimeter in shifts, and Tessa's phone was monitored, her contacts filtered. Even a walk to the greenhouse required a shadow detail. It was suffocating. It was maddening. And in the darkest part of her heart, it made her feel cherished in a way Marcus's neglect never had. You're pacing, Wesley said from the doorway of the solarium. He leaned against the frame, watching her like a hawk watches a mouse or a jewel. I'm a prisoner, Tessa shot back, spinning to face him. Her hand instinctively went to the slight curve of her stomach, a protective gesture he tracked with hooded eyes. I can't go to the city. I can't see my friends. I tried to order takeout yesterday, and your security team intercepted the driver at the gate to screen the lasagna. My enemies know you are pregnant, Wesley said simply, walking toward her. They know you are the weak point in my armor. I don't take risks with my assets. Is that all I am? She stepped closer, fueled by pregnancy hormones and cabin fever. An asset? An incubator with a pulse? Wesley stopped inches from her. The air between them crackled, heavy and electric. You know you are more than that. Prove it. Take me out to dinner. No. Too dangerous. He caught her chin, tilting her face up. But I will bring the world to you. An hour later, the cavernous dining room was transformed. The harsh overhead lights were killed, replaced by hundreds of candles that cast a golden, softening glow over the brutalist architecture. A private chef had prepared the Italian meal she'd tried to order, but it was the small velvet box on the table that caught her eye. It's not an apology, Wesley warned, pouring her sparkling water while he took the wine. It's a truth. Tessa opened the box. Inside sat a vintage emerald necklace, not a new cold diamond from the vault, but something old, intricate, and warm. My grandmother's, he murmured. She wore it when she carried my father. She said it was for the woman who would save this family. Tessa looked up, stunned. You could have chosen anyone, Wesley. You could have hired a surrogate or married a socialite who knew the game. Why me? Wesley took a long swallow of wine, his composure slipping just enough to reveal the man beneath the monster. Because I saw you at a gala 3 years ago. You were wearing blue. You were laughing at something your husband said, and I hated him for it. He reached across the table, lacing his fingers through hers. I didn't choose you because of the debt, Tessa. I bought the debt because it was the only way to get you. I didn't want an heir. I wanted your child. The confession hung in the air, terrifying and intoxicating. He hadn't just trapped her, he had hunted her. And as he lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles with fervent devotion, Tessa realized the cage was locked from the inside, and she no longer wanted to leave. 8 months had passed, and the safe in Wesley's study was usually biometrically locked, a steel vault for his darkest secrets. But tonight, heavily pregnant and restless, while Wesley was distracted by the crisis with the Asian markets, he had left the panel ajar, the green light blinking like a treacherous invitation in the dim room. Tessa shouldn't have looked. She should have gone back to bed, back to the safety of the illusion he had spun around her with candlelight and confessions. But trust was a fragile thing, and curiosity was a curse. She pulled the heavy door open. Inside, nestled between stacks of cash and deeds, was a thick folder labeled Moorfield Acquisition. Her heart stuttered. Not Moorfield debt. Acquisition. She opened it, and the world dissolved. The documents weren't just records of Marcus's theft. They were surveillance logs, dated 30 months ago. Subject, Marcus Moorfield. Activity, unauthorized transfer of $50,000. Tessa flipped the pages, her hands shaking so violently she nearly tore the paper. There were emails between Wesley and his chief financial officer. CFO. Moorfield is dipping into the pension fund. Should we terminate and prosecute? Current loss, $200K. Wesley. No. Let him continue. Monitor the accounts. I need the liability to exceed $10 million before we act. I need the wife to be insolvent. He had watched. He had watched Marcus steal, watched him gamble, watched him destroy their lives brick by brick, and he had done nothing. No, he had done something worse. He had held the door open. He hadn't bought her debt to save her. He had cultivated it to enslave her. The romantic dinner, the confession about seeing her 3 years, Agos. It was all sick. He had farmed her tragedy like a crop, waiting for the harvest. Tessa? She spun around. Wesley stood in the doorway, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand. His eyes dropped to the open file, and his face hardened into a mask of stone. He didn't look sorry. He looked annoyed that she had found out too soon. You let him ruin us, she whispered, the betrayal tasting like bile. You could have stopped him at 50,000. You let it get to 12 million so you could buy me. It was a necessary strategy, Wesley said, stepping into the room. You never would have left him. You are too loyal. I had to make leaving him the only option. You're a monster. I am a man who gets what he wants, and I wanted you. Get away from me. Tessa hurled the file at him, papers fluttering like dead birds. She didn't think. She ran. She bolted past him, adrenaline fueling her heavy limbs, desperate for the front door, for the rain, for anything that wasn't this golden cage. Tessa, stop, you can't leave. She reached the foyer, her fingers scrabbling for the handle, when the pain hit. It wasn't a cramp. It was a vice grip tightening around her lower back and stomach, squeezing the air from her lungs. She gasped, doubling over, clutching her belly as the room spun. No, she moaned, fear replacing fury. Not yet. It's too soon. Wesley was there in a second, catching her before she hit the marble. His face was pale, the arrogance gone, replaced by pure terror. Tessa? Look at me. Breathe. My baby, she sobbed, clutching his lapels as the darkness encroached. Don't let your poison hurt my baby. I've got you, he swore, lifting her into his arms as he shouted for the security team. I won't let you go. I'll never let you go. The sterile hum of the hospital monitors was the only sound in the private suite. A rhythmic reassurance that the baby was still fighting. Wesley had finally been forced to leave Tessa's side by a nurse who threatened security if he didn't go sign the admission forms. It was a 5-minute window. 5 minutes where the dragon left the horde unguarded. When he returned, the bed was empty. The IV line had been ripped out, dripping saline and blood onto the linoleum. The lock on the balcony door was shattered. Tessa! The roar tore from his throat, primal and terrified. Panic, cold and sharp, sliced through his composure. He didn't call the police. He called his head of security. Locked down the city. They took her. It didn't take a genius to know who. Victoria. She had waited for the chaos, for the crack in his defenses. Wesley Craig, the man who valued spreadsheets over souls, went scorched earth. He stormed out of the hospital, phone glued to his ear as he authorized the liquidation of 3 offshore accounts. $50 million. Enough to buy an army. "Find her," he barked at his tech team, who were currently hacking into the city's traffic grid. "I don't care about the laws. Use the satellites. Use the facial recognition. If you have to black out the entire East Coast power grid to find a black SUV, do it." He sat in the back of his armored car, staring at the empty seat beside him. The file, the betrayal, the money. It was all ash in his mouth. He had spent his life building an empire to pass down to an heir. But now, staring into the abyss of losing her, he realized the terrifying truth. The heir was just a legacy. Tessa was the life. Without her, the dynasty was just a pile of cold stones. He would burn it all down, every dollar, every share, every building, just to hear her yell at him one more time. The ping of a location hit his phone. An abandoned warehouse in the Docklands. "Sir," his driver said, watching him in the rearview mirror. "The team is 10 minutes out. We should wait for backup." "Drive," Wesley commanded, checking the clip of the handgun he hadn't touched in years. If they touch her, there won't be anyone left for the team to arrest. He wasn't a CEO tonight. He was a husband, and he was going to war. The warehouse doors exploded inward, not from a breach charge, but from the front bumper of a customized armored Mercedes crashing through the corrugated steel. Dust and debris rained down as Wesley stepped out of the wreckage, gun drawn, moving with the terrifying fluidity of a man who has nothing left to lose. Victoria's mercenaries were professionals, but they weren't fighting for their lives. Wesley was. He dropped the first guard with a shot to the knee and a pistol whip to the temple before the man could raise his rifle. The second guard hesitated, seeing the demon in the suit, and that hesitation cost him his consciousness. "Wesley!" Tessa's scream echoed from the upper gantry. She was tied to a chair, Victoria standing behind her with a syringe hovering over her neck. "One step closer and I stop her heart," Victoria shrieked, her composure cracking. "The trust says the heir needs to be born. It doesn't say the mother has to survive the delivery." Wesley froze. His gun didn't waver, but his eyes locked onto Tessa's. She was terrified, bruised, but alive. "You want the company, Victoria?" Wesley's voice was eerily calm. He slowly lowered the gun, kicking it away. "Take it. I'll sign over the voting rights. I'll liquidate my shares. It's yours. Just let her go." Victoria blinked, stunned. "You'd give up the empire? For her?" "The empire is nothing," Wesley said, taking a slow step forward. "She is everything." In that split second of Victoria's confusion, Tessa slammed her head backward, smashing into Victoria's nose. The syringe clattered to the floor. Wesley was moving before it hit the ground. He vaulted the railing, tackling his aunt away from his wife. The police sirens wailed in the distance, the cavalry arriving too late to save the day, but just in time to witness the fall of the villain. 1 year later, the fireplace in the nursery crackled warmly, a stark contrast to the cold rain that had started this journey. Tessa sat in the rocking chair, nursing Wesley Jr., his dark hair a perfect copy of his father's. Wesley leaned against the doorframe, watching them. The brutalist mansion had softened. There were toys on the Persian rugs and family photos on the mantel. He walked over, kneeling beside the chair, and held up a lighter. In his other hand was the contract, the prenup, the heir clause, the debt agreement. He lit the corner. They watched the paper curl into ash. "No more contracts," he whispered, kissing her forehead. "Just us." Tessa smiled, taking his hand and placing it on her stomach, where a new, secret flutter had just begun. "Just us," she agreed. "And one more makes four."